with the order of questions, since it's two of you, like I guess maybe Brittany starts with the question, and then Jeff, you come in, and then we'll like kind of go in like a circle, if that's cool. Yep.
That'll work.
Cool. All right. What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the Alto again, and this time we are here with Rwake. Thank you both, Brittany and Jeff, so much for coming on the show today. It is great to have you on the channel, and great to have you guys back. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate you giving us some new music. I gotta tell you, like, I've been a little bit out of the loop lately, so I didn't expect new Rwake music to be on my 2025 bingo card, and I am so glad that it is. Return of the Magik. Not only is this just like a fantastic record to come back with, but I think it is my favorite Rwake album now, entirely. Like, I didn't think anything would be able to top, the previous work that we heard in like Absence or Hell and whatnot, but excellent work. For people who haven't heard the full record yet, though, do you think that the first track that you released, the Return of the Magik, the title track, is that a good representation of what this whole record is going to sound like, or is that just scratching the surface of what's to come?
I would have to say that it's just scratching the surface. While it comes out, it's a bruiser. We have a lot of stuff that's a little bit more intricate on the record that we don't touch on quite so much on on the Return of Magik in itself and that song. But yeah, I think it's just a teaser for what's to come and for the rest of the album.
You want to add to that, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind that we're long form music listeners and we're long form music creators. So, people often laugh and joke with us about the length of our songs being, 12, 14, 17 minutes. But, growing up listening to, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon from start to finish, you weren't allowed to skip tracks and you got to start at the beginning and make it to the end. And so that's just the way that we grew to love music. And so, that being said, the record is that. It's a start at the beginning journey that goes all the way up until the end. We've always been real obsessed with dynamics and contrast, and there's a lot of clean work, and there's a lot of super brutal, heavy, sludgy stuff, and it's just kind of everywhere in between there. So, yeah, it's a full experience. It's about an hour long, so roll some joints and get ready.
Hey, it's still shorter than the commute sometimes, so I appreciate that. But being that the last album was called Rest, maybe this is just me completely overthinking your catalog, but like being that the last album was called Rest, and that was the last album since 2011, and this is called Return of the Magik, was that almost intentional? Like, okay, the last album's going to be called Rest, we're going to lay our work to rest for a while, and then return with Magik, or did I just completely overthink it?
No, that's just total coincidence. They're in no way related, any of the album titles, to our productivity in any way.
Was there sort of a preconceived vision, though, behind the making of the Return of the Magik? Was there sort of a goal that you all had in mind with the making of it, or was it very much a throwing paint at the wall and seeing what sticks songwriting process?
So when it comes to our writing music, while Jeff's the main architect for most of the songs, we don't ever have like anything, and like there's never like a particular audience that we have in mind. There's never like a particular anything that we're okay, this is what we're going to try to do, and this is what we're going to try to. We essentially write music for ourselves. We write music for whatever we want to hear, and so no, there's never like a specific goal in mind when writing the songs, whether it be the lyrics or the music as a whole. It's pretty much just taking whatever the earth gives us and letting that channel through.
And Jeff, being like an architect of the song too, because being very important with the rhythmic aspect of the band, the very famous saying, your drummer sucks, your band sucks, and it's a very, very important part. So you have to focus on technical proficiency, but you also need to let the emotion and the artistic vision sort of shine through. So being the architect of the music, do you find that maybe the technical aspects is sometimes butting heads with the artistic aspect in a way?
Well, I mean, they're pretty much two separate processes for me, and I'm pretty good at keeping them separate. So, when the artistic part comes in, because I've been playing guitar and bass longer than drums even. And so for me, when the music starts to appear in the ethers overhead and I start hearing the music and start getting bombarded with it, it's more comfortable for me just to grab a guitar and just try to channel it and record it really quick. And then I can go back and record the drums and then put guitar and bass over it later. So that part of it's the creative part is easy. Technically speaking, it's always been challenging for this band because we're so loud. We have such a huge backline that it's I know better than to try to do a lot of crazy fast stuff because it just won't convey live. It'll get lost in the two Ampeg 810 bass cabs will just eat the drums up. So I have to be pretty particular about all the drum fills that I do and everything like that. I have to make sure that they're all things that I can hit really hard on and not a lot of wrists going on. It's all shoulders and hips.
When it comes to like the concepts of the records too, because most of your album titles are very thought provoking with a title like Absence Due to Projection or Hell is a Door to the Sun, and now with the Return of the Magik, If You Walk Before You Crawl, and so on and so forth. Do you think of conceptual elements in a way, or a lyrical idea that maybe helps contribute to the sound in a way, or do you all need like the full album like written musically already there before you could have an idea, this is what it's lyrically going to be like and this is the message that we're going to try to convey?
Generally the music everything comes from the music. So once the foundation of the music's laid down, CT takes lead on pretty much deciding what direction we want to go lyrically, and then we just kind of, me and him, build off of each other as far as that goes. But I think it comes from the music, and what the music kind of pulls out of us.
And then when that is pulled out of you, do you want to leave it open to interpretation, or because
yes,
because
very much so.
Okay, because I've always thought that the music is very thought-provoking in a way, and like for me, I wanted to almost kind of put myself in your shoes and almost kind of like understand what you were feeling when I was listening to this particular song or this particular title.
Yeah, we definitely want to leave it up to interpretation with everything, and even for ourselves, what means something, one day may feel something completely different the next day. But it's definitely, emotion fueled while at the same time, very, we try to push ourselves in everything that we do, whether it's musically or lyrically or, anything. And we definitely, lay it all out. Lay it all out there, but yeah, I think it's definitely, we want people to interpret it however they want to and whatever it feels to them, and it may feel and be interpreted differently every time you listen to it.
Well, being that your songs are very long too, and do you find it like, because emotions are like lightning and they strike and they come and go very quickly, so if you're working on a very long song for a very long period of time, do you find it more difficult to sort of maintain the emotional spark that initially sparked the idea?
No, I don't think so. I think because the music is just so powerful in itself. It's we always kind of describe it as a religious experience, and so like once you're locked into that, it's hard to get pulled away from it.
Mm-hmm. And Jeff, being the drummer of the band too, because some people may assume that because it's not a melodic driven instrument or there's no lyrics to read, that it's not a very emotional instrument. It is just very physical and very technical and just has sort of like one goal in mind. But I listen to the rhythmic aspects of Wake and I'm like, damn, there's clearly a lot of emotional energy channeled in there as well. So it's clear to say that while you obviously have to do what's right for the song, you also are putting yourself into the rhythmic contributions as well, right?
Yeah, part of the ceremonial type music that we write, it fits right in to be more of a tribal drummer and to focus more on more simplistic rhythms, where we do have, a lot of different time signatures and a lot of BPM shifts where we're changing tempos. There is a technical aspect to that too, but I just try to keep everything as tribal as possible to make it convey in the best way possible live.
Do you, when it comes to the rhythmic aspects as well, do you need music already present too? Like we already talked about the music being present before the lyrics, but do you need music present too to know like how you're gonna contribute the drums there, or have you ever had like a whole pattern written that maybe the rest of the band would write over?
There has been times where the rhythm comes first, especially on the newer stuff. There has been some sections of music where the rhythm shows up first, and then it's just basically about assigning it a melody.
And going back to the emotions we talked to, because I've interviewed numerous bands, and when I like ask like how the record was made, and then they all say, "Oh, we all collectively came together, and it was such a mutual part. Like we all felt the same way." I don't really believe that, because if you're in a band with 4 to 5 other people, or 7, or in your case, you're all gonna have different experiences. You're all gonna feel differently. But being that you have so many elements in your music, is it maybe almost better if you're all kind of like in your individual worlds in the songwriting?
Well, I think that generally that's a very political, response, is that way. Like, but with this album in particular, it was it's different. We have a different lineup on this album than previous years and stuff. So for this album in particular, and not that this is the way that we'll always proceed, but Jeff pretty much constructed all of the guitars. I mean, aside from the solos, I mean, he constructed all of that starting back in 2018, when we were we were kind of in a lull, if you will, spread out across the country. So Jeff pretty much constructed, all of the guitars, the drums, bass, and everything. Like I said, starting back in 2018, and then once we got the lineup solidified, and say 2022 or 2023, then we all started kind of coming together, changing certain things, and kind of building off of what Jeff had originally laid out. But for this record in particular, I mean, it was pretty much it all channeled through Jeff first, and then like writing wise, John, our guitar player, he adds a whole nother element as far as like building layers of when it comes to like adding the emotional layers and stuff like that. And then, of course, I try to set the tone with the keys and stuff like that. But for this record in particular, it was mainly came from Jeff.
Mm-hmm. And Jeff, did you want to sort of add to that too, in terms of like the experimental aspects and how everybody had their different perspectives in it?
Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate to be as passionate as we are, and we're also kind of unfortunate to be as passionate as we are. When we have ideas, we just sink our teeth in, and so the development phase was awesome for this record, because like B said, like the stuff started showing up in my head at 2018, and it actually came in 2 sections. There was a section in 2018 where I came up with about an hour's worth of music. It just kind of appeared, and I just kind of captured it. It was really impulsive, and it just kind of happened against my will. And then in 2021, it happened again. There was another phase where it was just like a 6-week span where the music just kept flooding my head. And so, that part of it was kind of involuntary, and I don't take a lot of credit for it, even though it came through me. It really didn't feel like it was something that I created. It felt more like something that I captured in a sound cage. But the development phase was even cooler, because that's when everybody came in and was able to, we didn't deconstruct the structures of the song. We just built upon them and added layers and added more, and maybe shortened pieces or extended pieces depending on the dynamic flow. And so the development phase was actually really awesome, and everybody's super passionate, and it just flowed really well when we started working together.
Every year I have a favorite quote that I've heard in an interview. You probably have my favorite quote of the year now, and that is, "This isn't something I created, it's something I captured." I love that. That is the best creative quote I've heard. Excellent work. Excellent work.
Thanks.
That take the rest of the day off. That was perfect. But you mentioned too, because you're all in different parts of the country now, and this is actually the first time I'm asking this question, so I'll test the waters with you, because you aren't the same band anymore, in the sense that it's not like you're all the same band that formed in Little Rock, and you're all jamming together. You're all in different parts of the country now. Some would argue that maybe kills the chemistry of a band, or that doesn't changes the chemistry in a way, but I don't think it necessarily affects anything. It's just the modern way that we live in now. I think it's almost good in a way, because God forbid one member leaves and there's no way to access other people. But so has maybe being in different parts of the country and kind of having that separation, did that maybe add some sort of creative ideas? Because maybe one member is experiencing something on part of the world that you wouldn't be able to experience yourself.
I think that's a very interesting take on it. Yeah, I've never really kind of thought about that in that way. But I think, when it comes, like me, Chris Terry, John, Jeff, Reed, we've all known each other since we were teenagers. And then we've known John, since he was a teenager, so it's like we all have such a link together that, it doesn't matter if we're on the other side of the world, we're all, we've known each other for way more years than we haven't, so that bond is always there. And then having, Austin, the new guitar player coming in, um, uh, I think that kind of that adds an element of fun to it, just because we haven't known him for literally over 30 years. So. But yeah, so I think the being spread out. I'm not sure if it because we've all known each other for so long. I don't know if it holds that much of a I don't know if it changes that much.
Yeah, because I've interviewed bands where like they'll have a different member on a different continent at this point, and like, and they say, oh, it makes, and I agree, like it makes it harder to tour and arrange studio time and all
Yeah.
this, but part of it, I mean, it can't possibly hinder the idea or the creativity that it could come with.
No, that's a whole nother level that we don't really experience as far as being spread out and stuff. Yeah, that would probably make for some very neat chemistry to have people spread out on different parts of the world with living completely different experiences.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you,
but
you all need a European member just for the next record. Just
we'll take them if they play cello. They're in.
sounds good. I mean, you won't have a short of a cello players with all those symphonic metal bands in Sweden. So, like,
All right.
but I've always thought that your music is very experimental, regardless of what the label is on Metal Archives or something like that. I like, people refer to as doom or stoner or sludge or whatever, and we could get into what those subgenres mean in general. But it's fair to say that trying new things doesn't really seem to be that much of an obstacle if your music does already have so many different elements, right? It doesn't seem like that. Has there ever been a moment where there is like hesitation to maybe incorporate a new element into your sound?
No, never. To me, my greatest nightmare is like us never changing and never growing. When people ask, is the new record going to sound like the old one? I'm like, I hope not. I hope we would have changed over the last 13 years and grown to something else. But I think people have always had a really hard time defining our music because it is, there is no genre, there is no, specific box that you can put it in. I think we love that. I would never want to be backed into a corner where this is what we do and this is the only thing that we can do and we can't do anything else, or we would let our fans down or something like that. That would be awful if you ask me. But we've always tried to push the limits on everything that we do, and including different styles of music. I mean, we all listen to, like I said, we don't write music for a specific listener. We write music for ourselves, and by doing that, that doesn't put any constraints on us on what we can or can't do, or what we think our listener may or may not like. Like that never comes in to play with anything that we do, like, or ooh, do we think people would like this? That never comes into play with anything that we do. So we always try to just do what we like, and if it's something that's completely different than what someone would expect, then then great. We're never scared to do anything different.
Yeah, and Jeff too, rhythmically speaking, as well as the architectural aspect. I mean, how do you like having no limits? I mean, I think it's cool in the sense that you're not confined, but I mean, eventually you have to have a composition and a song that makes sense too. So, does it almost seem overwhelming to?
Well, I mean, I think that there is a specific atmosphere or mindset or just overall nightmarish dreamscape that defines what we do. That it's just a very broad cloud that we exist in, and as long as everything fits that otherworldly metaphysical trance, then then it fits within the ceremony, and whatever it takes to do that, whether it be a tambourine or a sample from Jim Dandy from Black Oak, Arkansas, whatever it takes to create that scary dream that we seem to be able to do, then it works.
Yeah. And with that stoner metal label that everybody has, I don't even know what that means, because I've gotten stoned. I've gotten stoned listening to Morbid Angel, and I've gotten stoned listening to Christina Aguilera. So like yeah, I think
one of the best things. Sorry to interrupt, but one of the best things you can ever do for your own brain is to get stoned and listen to Suffocation, Pierced from Within on headphones. Just saying.
Duly noted. I got my pre-roll back here. I got homework. I mean, I'm gonna have to postpone the next interview I have, or maybe be really stoned after I do it. Maybe that'll enhance it. But I have two more questions. One is I'll get the most difficult one out of the way. I'm curious to what you both have to say about this. How do you know when a song is done?
Gosh, never. It's never done. I mean, literally, it's never done. Like we recorded these songs. We're about to start playing them live, and I guarantee you they will grow and they will change as soon as we start doing that. Because that's one thing that we haven't got to do with this material that we always did in the past. Is we would write the songs, and then we would, we were just like, road dogs. We were just constantly like, playing shows and stuff like that. And the songs would always grow and evolve, and so, yeah, these songs aren't done just because they're recorded. They're definitely not done. And we're definitely not afraid to, if something starts feeling better we feel like something, is missing or is needed, or that would just make it better, we'll definitely do that to these new songs as we start playing them live.
Yeah, and what's funny is with the new single, so before I got the record, I just got the new single on Apple Music, so I was just listening to that. And when it finishes, it automatically loops, but you forget, like it really feels like it does in fact never end. I've seen that the song is almost like, I press play, and then I get lost in the song, and then before I know it, it's like kind of back to where it was. I was like, oh wait a minute, it restarted already, and I didn't even notice.
Yeah, it actually ends with the same melody that it starts with.
Okay, so maybe that's why it gives me that sort of feeling. And then the final question I wanted to have is just kind of going back a little bit to the origin story, because being a band that did form in Little Rock, I mean, maybe a lot of people only know Evanescence being the only Arkansas band, but being that Pallbearer has come from your neck of the woods, which is a fantastic band that I think definitely caters to the same sort of genre as well, or the same sort of audience. What was the sort of scene was there sort of a scene in Little Rock, Arkansas? I know it's a very small state, and I know it's a very small city, but there has to be some sort of scene where all of you got together, especially because there are so many members in Wake that you all just kind of came together, formed love for the same music, and there was sort of like maybe like an underground
We've
scene.
always had a really great scene in Little Rock, back to, even when I was 12 years old. There's always been, there's something that, when you're stuck in the Bible Belt, and that it brings a lot out of people, and there's no better escape than music, and so all the way back to the 90s, we've always had a really killer scene here in Little Rock. Bands that that'll never get their day in the sun, but yeah, there's something about when you're that oppressed that brings out that emotion and stuff in music, that not that you have to be oppressed to write good music, but it does help. And so it's we've always just been really fortunate to have a killer scene here, and even now to this day, there's this whole new younger generation that has this this scene that's so reminiscent to me of like what it was like when we were kids, so I think we've been really fortunate about that. While the world hasn't got to hear it, we all got to grow up with it, and kids are getting to grow up with it, a killer scene right now too. So I think we're very fortunate in that sense. And because, of course, the scene now is a lot different than it was when we were kids. I mean, when we were kids, there wasn't an internet. There wasn't, you had to write directions to the venue on flyers, because there wasn't GPS, there wasn't all those things. So I mean, it's a lot different. But there, when we were kids, without having, most people didn't have access to music, outside of, outside of the radio and what was played on like classic rock channels, so it bred these different, bands that there was no one to rip off. You know what I mean? It was like everything was very authentic because of, the lack of access to other, music. So I think we've always been very fortunate as far as that goes.
Yeah, and I think the internet has become its own scene in of itself. Like, I'll give you an example.
Right, yes, yeah, very much so.
As a fan of Wake, I just want to say it doesn't surprise me that Ear Split is representing you guys, because again, it has, I've almost given Ear Split its own genre. It's Ear Split metal because I've seen a lot of bands that had that, sludgy, long song, stoner, darkened, what aspect behind it. And I've seen a lot of those bands rise in my journey, exploring the scene, and then to see that there were bands back when I was 3 years old starting this, that wasn't Sleep. It was or Neurosis. It was very interesting to see that sort of underground, thriving sort of scene has become.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well said.
So before we go, I want to thank you both so much for your time. Most of all, thank you for your music and for coming back and hitting the ground running. I cannot wait for the rest of the world to hear the Return of the Magik. Is there anything else with the Return of Magik that you'd like to promote with the release of this record? What we could be expecting in terms of shows, if you're allowed to say at this moment, of course.
Yeah, we've got some shows.
Yeah.
If I may jump in real quick, because I'm about to have to jump off here. But yeah, if we got some bunch of shows coming up. We're going to release the full record comes out in March for everyone to hear, and it's going to be on limited edition vinyl, and we got a lot of shirts and hoodies and stuff. So just hunt us down and find us.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Wake, the Return of Magik, out this March 2025. Be sure to pick it up. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.
Yes.
Thank you so much.